Ansible, what is it? I think most of you probably have some idea or you wouldn't have shown up. Um, we'll talk about kind of high level how it works. We're not going to get into really the low level details of the operations. We'll save that for a future course. We have a course in the works for Ansible, so we'll save it for that. And then a live code demo, because if I've learned anything in my years, live code demos always a good idea. So inevitably, when something goes awry, I'm gonna count on you guys to chime in, help me find any typos, find anything that it might be askew. Okay. So this will be kind of an interactive thing we got going here. So let's dive in. What is Ansible? So depending on who you ask, you'll hear a lot of things. You'll hear it's about configuration management, it's about provisioning. The simplest explanation I could give it is that Ansible is an automation engine. And because of that, it has a lot of power. It can do all of these things. It can do configuration management, you can do deployments, provisioning, security, and anything else that you want to automate. So Ansible at its core is about automating all the things, right? So it's kind of tying back to why I said it's automating all the things. Okay, so how it works. Ansible needs to know what servers that you want to do things with. So it does this through the concept of inventory files. And an inventory file, just at its core, is a text file. And it lists a bunch of servers. That could be IP address or some wildcard that encompasses a range of IP addresses or URL. And like you see here, it has a grouping. It has a name. Can you guys see my mouse? Hopefully I'm hovering over where it says web servers. So we can define our web servers are www1 and www2.example.com. And anytime we reference the word web servers, that's a variable that means do something to both of those servers. You can have as many of them as you want, or you can break them out logically so that if you were to run a script against, say, your database servers to back stuff up, you don't have to worry about which servers it's going to run against. It's always going to run against the ones that you specify. So I'm just going to scroll down in the questions real quick. Mouse is visible. All right, great. So inventory files are basically static files. However, you can also have dynamic files. You could use something like a Python script to dynamically generate your inventory. Now, this is useful for stuff like cloud providers because you may spool up 10 to a million virtual machines in the cloud. You're not necessarily going to want to add those all manually to a file, so you can use a script that can interact with your cloud provider, and it will generate that list for you. We'll get into an example of that. We're going to use EC2 and kind of dynamically create some EC2 instances, so we'll talk about that. But for the broad strokes, it's about having all of your inventory so Ansible knows what to do. Now, here we have a couple of ad hoc queries. So in this case, we have Ansible, it's the top line here, Ansible all, and then tac m, and then the word ping. Now what that's doing is, this is saying, tell Ansible to use all of the servers in our inventory and ping them. Now, you don't see all specified here, and that's because it's kind of a reserved word that just basically means all of your inventory. So if you see that, that's what's happening. And it's running the module ping, and it's going to ping every server that you have in your inventory. Now, that may or may not be exceptionally useful, but it's at least good to know that you can run these ad hoc commands to do one-off things. So now, the next line, line 2 says, Ansible web servers, tac m, yum, tac a, and then we have a string wrapped around some properties. We're saying we want to execute on all of our web servers. Remember, we have our web servers here. So anytime we reference web servers, it knows that it should be these two. And it's going to run the yum package manager, and it's going to install the HTTP daemon, and it's going to make sure it's installed. See how we have state installed? Now, if you ran this against 1 or a million servers, it's going to make sure that module is installed, and if it is already installed, it can let you know it's already done. You don't have to worry about it. You can also use this to specify versions. You could say, I always want it to be the latest. If you want to update all of your web servers with one command, you can do that here. And And then again, we have web servers, and then we run the reboot command. So this is going to reboot all of your web servers. Now, these ad hoc commands are great. You run them on the command line, they reach out to some amount of your servers from your inventory, and they execute some command. But what if you need more structure? Now that's where playbooks come in. You can define in a playbook a series of tasks that you want run, and then you can call that playbook at any time, and you can actually run that in a reproducible way. Now, there's a lot of things I like about this. You can write a playbook, share it with your coworkers. You can have it under version control, which means if something goes wrong with one of the changes, you can roll it back and rerun the last version. This one on the screen, it's going to create a VM on Google Cloud Engine. If you see under tasks, we have launch instances, and then you see GCE, that's a Google Cloud Engine module. So you can use these different modules that are built into Ansible to do an awful lot of different things. So that's kind of a high level of Ansible. Ansible uses a set of inventory files, and those can be dynamically generated through code, or they can be static files. And it uses that to determine which servers you want to run different commands against. And it does all of this through SSH, which means you don't need to have some sort of agent installed on all of those servers that you're managing. They just have to support SSH, and they also have to have Python included. So for Linux servers, mostly that's not a big deal, but for some of them, that might turn into an issue. Okay. Just looking over to see if there's any questions at this point. Okay, so let's end this and let's get into the live code, because that's where all the fun is, right? So I thought it would be fun if we can you guys all see my screen? I just want to make sure you can see my text editor. Okay, I'm getting yeses. Great. So I thought what would be fun is, when I was thinking about creating an Ansible webinar, I was kind of thinking back to my development and what I used Ansible for the most, and really it was things like handling backups. It was things like deploying, configuring development environments was a big part of it. So I thought what I would like to do is take this simple HTML file, and I want us to back it up to S3. I want us to take this, dump it out to S3, and then I thought it'd be cool if we could take that file and deploy it to a staging server, make sure that Apache is installed and it's serving it up. And once we're happy with it, we're going to deploy it to a production server, and these are just the names of the EC2 servers, right? There's no real other value than just being labels. And then we would, if we have time, we're going to maybe create a module, because I think that's a lot of fun. Ansible has, I think, like 400 or 500 built-in modules, so you have a lot of power to start with. What if you need to do something a little different? If we have time, let's create a module and kind of show that process, because with a little bit of code, you can do a lot of really cool stuff. Before we do that, I want to show you some additional ad hoc commands, because I think seeing it on the PowerPoint doesn't convey the real kind of value of it. So I'm just going to copy a command I have on a different window. I'm not sure if you can see it. Okay, so I'm cheating and just pasting in this command, but what this command is doing is it's saying we're going to run the Ansible executable. This tac I is the inventory file. Remember I said we can do dynamic inventory? You don't necessarily have to have it in a static file. Ansible provides this ec2.py file, and what this does is it dynamically goes out to your AWS environment and it finds all the info that you need to know about your AWS environment. So you have a similar one for Google Cloud and for other cloud providers, and this is really cool. You can mix and match these, and that's probably outside of the scope of what we'll cover here, but you could have some stuff using EC2, some stuff using Google Cloud, and some with just local host files. So this is using Boto. For any of you that are Python developers, you're probably familiar with Boto. So let's go back to our command. So we say our inventory should come from our Amazon EC2 instances. We're going to use the user Ubuntu, because these particular servers are just Ubuntu servers. And the Ubuntu user is the one I have SSH keys for. So then this is cool. This is where we specify what we want to actually call. We could say only show our production servers, only show the servers that are in a specific region. You can target just the servers you want to run a command against. Let's see if we can't do an example of that. We'll do, what did I do? All right, just didn't delete enough. Okay, we're going to do tag underscore environment underscore staging. Now, if I have my typing correct, okay. Now, this isn't going to mean much until we go in and see. On the screen here, what we have is two EC2 instances. We have one named webinar and one named webinar 2. Let's look at the tags. Environment, okay, staging. If you can see where I'm highlighting, it's on the bottom of the screen if you can't see where I'm highlighting. We have a couple of tags, and the key here is environment, and the value is staging. In this one, we have an environment name, production. So let's go back. We said we wanted to ping this server, and we should have gotten back 5242.122.48. Let's go back. 5242.122.48. So we can target just what we want. We can target these tags with this underscore syntax. We're saying, look at all the tags and find the tags that have the key of environment. We want all of them that have a staging value. Okay. So we could do, let's do name, right? We have a couple tags. Let's do this one. So we should see if we ask it for a tag of name and a value of webinar. This is the IP address we should see, 524181.165, okay? So we're saying tag underscore name underscore webinar. We're going to ping it. Okay, there we go, 524181. Sorry, you guys, I assume that you know where I'm looking, but I'm going to just highlight it so that it makes it a little easier to read. Okay, so if we go back, 524181.165. So we can tell Ansible, this is the pool of our inventory. It comes from Amazon, but specifically we want to hone in on just a certain set of servers. The value here is you could run your commands on very specific groups of servers. Now maybe you have something like a blue-green deployment. Right, so in a blue-green deployment, you have a group of servers that will tag as color blue, and a group of servers will tag as a color green. And then if you wanted to update your environment, you would update the one that's not live, and then you would flip the switch to tell your router to point to those servers. So you can target just those, update them with the latest code, and then switch over the router to look at just those. And if everything is good, you're all set. If not, you switch the router back to the other color environment, and you've basically just rolled back any broken changes. Okay. So let's clear our screen. So this is the basic syntax of an ad hoc command. You can run different modules. Here we're just running the print working directory, right? And anything in our US West 2. This is going to run, and in a few seconds, there. Okay. So our default working environment is /home/Ubuntu for both of those servers. Ad hoc commands are great. You can run stuff dynamically. I don't like to use it to make a lot of manipulation changes. Like I don't like to use it for patching and stuff like that necessarily, because I like to have all that in a playbook, which allows me to roll back. But what I do like it for is any sort of monitoring. If I want to know, like, are all of my servers actually up and running? We could go back to our ping, and we can determine, yep, okay, everything's working. See here, changed false. That means this was up and running before. It's still up and running now. So we can use these values, maybe in some sort of dashboard or some sort of other bit of code, to ensure that everything is behaving the way we want. Or we could check versions of things. You could run an audit to make sure everything is on a particular version of, let's say, OpenSSL. So that's where I see the value in ad hoc stuff. Now, we talked about playbooks as being a mechanism for when you need more structure or when you want to share this work with your fellow developers or operations folks, right? You want to create a set of tasks that you can reproduce over and over again. So that's where playbooks come into play. Let's write a quick playbook. Its goal is going to be to take this index.html and we're going to upload it to S3. Now I want to show you in S3. We're gonna dump it on this Ansible webinar bucket. Okay, nothing in the bucket, no tricks up my sleeve. All right, we're not trying to pull a fast one. Let's write this playbook now. It's not too long, so we can do that. I've got some code here. Let's see, upload to S3, and it's going to be a YAML file. Remember, Ansible uses YAML, which is yet another markup language. That's not my name for it. That's the name for it. And let's write this out. We're going to start with 3 tags, and what that does is just tells the processors that this is a YAML file. And we're going to say hosts, and we're going to specify my local machine, and we'll do connection local. So I've already said the host is local, but I like to run connection local just as a kind of a sanity check. Somebody comes in and edits this later, it's still going to say connection local, and then we should be all set, right? We don't have to worry that it's going to get run on an environment it's not supposed to. Less of an issue on this. This is a pretty benign thing to be running, so it's not too bad. Now, we have our tasks section. In our tasks section, this is where we define all of those different tasks. Now, we ran them as ad hoc things before, but here's where we break them out. So let's do S3. This is a module that is provided by Ansible. I want to show you in the documentation. They have an awful lot of modules. See here, we have S3. It gives you all of the parameters, right? So we know that there's a bucket parameter, there's a destination, encryption, right? Their documentation is really good, and it's getting better all the time. So here's some examples. If you were ever curious about what needs to happen, you could just swipe one of these, paste it in, and test it out. And I think that provides a lot of value to have documentation that, let's look at all these modules. I don't know how well it comes across scrolling on the screen, but if you go there yourself, you'll see it. It's quite a list, okay? So we're specifically going to target the S3 module. Let's jump back. So we're going to say our bucket equals, now this is our bucket, right? In our AWS console, we're going to grab this, copy it, we'll paste that in. Okay. Our object is going to be, we're going to keep it the same name. We're going to say index.html. And our source, that's the source file. What file do we want to upload? Okay. We're going to say /index.html. And the mode is going to be put. Okay. Now, you saw before, right? We ran some Ansible commands. Ansible, tac I, ec2. All right. We're going to run playbooks. Slightly different. Ansible, tac playbook. Okay. And then we're still, actually no, we don't need an inventory file because we're saying running on localhost. All right. So let's just specify we called it upload to S3. All right, let's see what happens. It's complaining the offending line appears to be here. Let's see. Ansible, tac hosts. Let's see. Who's seeing it? Let's see. S3 paste. There we go. Okay. So, slight typo in my code there. All right. So, what happened was I just ran this, and we have our tasks run, right? We do a setup, and then we run the task, upload to S3. It says it changed. If we go back, if we refresh this page, we should have our index.html. Okay, this is great. But now we want to see it, so we click here. Uh-oh. So some of you probably know what happened. We never specified what the permission should be. We said upload this to this bucket, but we didn't tell it that it should actually be running as a public thing. So let's look at our permissions. All right, content and contractors, we get to do whatever we want. We don't have the everyone with the open download permissions. How do we fix that? Let's go back, and we can say, oops, let's say permission equals public read. Okay, we're saying public read. Let's go back to our modules. If we were to filter for S3, let's find our permissions. Okay, so we can set different permissions here. This is added in 2.0, and this lets us determine if it's private, public read write, etc. Okay, so now we're going to send it back up, clear the screen, let's rerun this. Takes a second to upload. Okay, now in theory, let's close this. In theory, if we refresh, everything should look good. Click here. Okay, notice we have this additional permissions. We have everyone with open download. Let's click on this. Okay, Ansible, automate all the things and look cool doing it. So now, if we make a change, any change we want, this is live. Okay, I'm going to save that. Going to re-upload it. And let's do a refresh here. And there we have it. So having stuff in a playbook gives us a level of consistency. It allows us to share this with our coworkers. It allows us to share this with other ops people or other departments. Once you've written a playbook and shared it amongst your teams, they can all expand on it. They can all make it better. They can all make it more parameterized. And so you can build things really rapidly that become highly useful. Now this one admittedly is less useful than the stuff you'll probably be building, but it kind of gives you that framework to see that this sort of collaboration is going to be fairly easy. Okay, so we have it up on S3, and you saw we had 2 web servers. We have our production and our server that we call staging. Okay, let's take a look at these. What's on production? Okay, nothing. We have nothing on production. It doesn't even look like it is configured to run Apache. So our production environment, pretty generic, right? Let's look at our staging environment. Our staging environment, it looks like it has an outdated version. Remember what do we have here? And look cool doing it. This is live, right? And this one, okay, this one's outdated. Let's create another file. We're going to call it web server. Its job is going to be to make sure that our web server is installed and that the latest version of the file is loaded. Okay. I may cheat and just do a little copy paste here because I think I want to get to the modules at some point. So I don't want us to run out of time. So let's do a new file. We're going to call it web server. .yaml. Okay, so let's do this. All right, like I said, I'm gonna cheat just a little bit and copy and paste, but we'll go through it just so that it all makes sense. Do you remember in the ad hoc stuff I showed that we can do tag underscore then the key name and then the value, right? Let's jump back to that command just so that you see what I'm talking about. So if you look at this command, we're targeting everything that is in EC2, everything that's in Amazon that's an EC2 server, and we're saying specifically tag underscore environment underscore production. Okay, so we want to ping just the production servers. Okay, so we showed that before. This syntax, right? So this is us narrowing in on the hosts that we want to identify. Now we can do the same thing here. We can specify tag underscore, and then we're going to use this Jinja2 syntax to specify the tag variable and then a value variable. Okay, so what this does is we have our variables defined here. You see on the screen. Let me make that a little bigger. I don't know if you guys can see that. So we have tag, environment, value, staging. Now, if we didn't pass anything into this playbook, this is what this would automatically fill it in for. We'd look for all of our staging servers, and what we would do is we'd run the apt package management on it, install Apache 2. We're saying update the cache. We want to make sure that apt-get is using the latest information, so we want to update the cache before we do it. And we're saying the state should be the latest. What that means is it's going to go out to the apt package management. It's going to get the latest version of Apache. You can specify a specific version, and that's fine. That will allow you to lock in and use that lock-in to ensure that you're only running the version that you expect. Now, if you run latest on all your production stuff, you could end up with some issues. So this is good for development, but may not be what you're looking for production. Okay. Then we're going to use the get URL. We're saying we have a URL, right? We just uploaded this. We uploaded this to S3. This is from our Ansible webinar bucket. It's our index.html, and we want to put it in the var www html index.html. Now this next one, this is important. Force yes. If we have, go back, if we installed Ansible, and I'm sorry, if we installed Apache, what happens is Apache dumps a generic HTML file in that location, right? And so when this get URL runs, it's going to look and say, does that file already exist, right? It's saying, is this destination something that already exists? If it does, and it does because Apache put in a default one, it's going to skip this, right? So we're telling it force. Every time I want you to go out, I want you to get the latest version, and I want you to update it, no matter what is already there, okay? And here's the interesting thing. All right, we get to say, once you're done with this, I want you to notify this handler. See this handler here? What this does is says, this service named Apache 2 should be restarted whenever we notify the service. So when we notify this, run this Apache restart. So what we can do with this is we can edit the files that are underneath our var www, and then we can ensure that Apache gets restarted afterwards, so we're not working off of cached information. Okay, so let's save this, and I'm going to see if I have a cheat to run this one. Nope, I don't. Okay, so what we'll do, we're going to do Ansible Playbook. We need to use the dynamic inventory, right? If we go back, our hosts are looking up tags, and those tags need to come from AWS, right? We don't have them specified anywhere in a hosts file, so we need to tell it specifically to use the inventory ec2.py. Okay. Remember, this dynamically goes out and grabs all of the inventory from AWS for us, kind of a helper. So it makes it pretty dynamic, and we'll go back. So we're saying, go out to EC2, grab all of our servers with connect in with the user of Ubuntu, and then we're going to run that playbook, web server. See what it automatically filled this in? Environment underscore staging. We'll go back. As soon as this is done, I'll show you why. And I bet most of you are already saying, it's the variables, and you're right. Okay, so install the Apache web server. It changed. So there must have been an update since it ran last. Downloads the file, and then it runs the restart for Apache. Okay, so it just runs through our tasks one at a time in order. So these variables, they come from this var section, environment and staging. We could override that. We'll do that in just a second. Let's go out and make sure. Okay, this was our previous. That's our production. This is the file that's out on S3. Okay, S3. Okay, this is our. I want to make sure you know I'm not cheating. Let's go to. Okay, this is our staging server. Let's go back to our description. Copy that. I'm going to close out this. I'm going to paste it in. Okay. So we told Ansible what we want it to do is we want to make sure that we have the Apache web server on that environment, whatever is specified with a tag of environment with a value of staging, and we want to make sure it's the latest version. And then we want it to download our HTML file and restart Apache. You could do all this manually, but what happens when you have hundreds of servers? This sort of deployment doesn't scale well with manual stuff. So this is why this becomes useful. Now, if you want to do something else, let's say you kick this over to a coworker and he says, "Oh, I know a trick to lock down Apache, make it super secure." You hand this off to them. They can run their tasks that will happen after. So you can collaborate and build on these things very quickly. Okay, so now we have two cool pieces of functionality. We can upload to S3 from our local host, and we can deploy to a server. Let's deploy this to production. I want to show you we can override these variables. We're not locked in. Remember, our production server has nothing on it. Doesn't even have Apache installed. So let's test it out. I mean, I haven't tested this. It should work. And the way we'll do that is we're going to pass in the tac extra tac vars equals, and we'll say, what do we call it? Tag equals, and actually we don't have to do that. We just do the value. Right? Value equals production. Let's look back, make sure that everything's legit, right? We called this tag, we call this value. So now, if I pass in these extra variables, I can override what's set here by default. So I'm saying now value should be production. Again, that comes from our tags, right? Environment, production. All right, let's see if this works. Tac extra vars. Let me just make the screen a little wider for myself here. And I'll shrink the text so I can. Okay, let's run that and see what happens. Okay, see, it automatically filled in tag underscore environment underscore production. We told it we should override that value with something different. This is going to take a little bit longer because last time on the staging server, Apache was already installed, but it wasn't on the latest version. So this has to go out, it has to update the apt cache, and then it has to actually install the server. All right, now, in theory, if everything worked as it should, and we all know that never happens in a live code demo, if everything worked as it should, we should be able to go to that production environment and browse to it. Let's close that out. And there it is. Okay. So we can target just the servers we want and tell it to hit just those targeted environments inside of our AWS console. So what's next? We have the ability to upload our HTML, so we can make changes. Let's make a quick change. This is live. And then we'll do a smiley face, right? Because we're happy. And we're going to deploy that just to our production server. So no matter what, it's going to ensure that Apache is there. And then it's going to, yeah, see, oh, it says OK. Maybe it didn't go and deploy. Let's find out. Oh, you know why? Because I was kind of being a dope. And what I didn't do is upload it, right? I think a few of you just caught that for me, so thank you. Okay, so thank you for those of you that just said, hey, make sure you upload it first. Now we're going to redeploy. Again, our Apache web server is already installed unless there's a new version in the last few seconds. Notice, all right, we have download HTML file to, right? It changed. The reason it changed is we uploaded our file, our latest file with a smiley face, to S3, which is where this web server playbook is getting its information from. So let's go back and refresh and see the font. The font doesn't really do well to convey that that's a smiley face, but that's supposed to be a big old smiley face because we're all happy playing with Ansible. What's next? We have, oh, you know what would be fun? So I think it would be fun if we didn't have to run two separate commands, if we didn't have to run the upload to S3 and then the web server, right? Because that's tedious. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to create a playbook that just pulls in those other playbooks. We don't need to duplicate any effort here. What we'll do, is we'll create a new file, and we'll say upload and deploy. Okay, upload and deploy. .yaml. Now, Ansible gives us this really cool functionality to include additional playbooks. Include. If you're a developer, you're probably familiar with this type of includes. All it's going to do is pull in those things before it actually processes the playbook. Okay, so we have upload to s3.yaml. Right, that's this file here. So we're going to say is first I want you to upload this file, and we're just going to do some copy paste because I'm lazy, I admit it. And we'll call it web server. Let's make sure it's named right, web server. Okay. In theory, we should be able to call this, and we should be able to have it upload our index.html, and then it's going to deploy it to whatever server we say. Let's make a change, otherwise we won't know that it's working. Let's give this guy a body, okay? He needs a body. We'll give him some arms, and we'll give him some legs. We'll give him, there. Okay. So our little guy here, if you can see on the screen, I know the text is a bit small, but this little guy is going to go live out in EC2, okay? Let's go ahead and run. We'll send this to production. We're going to still pass in the extra variables because we can pass it in, and Ansible will know that it needs to distribute that to the playbook. And what we'll do is we call it upload and deploy. All right, let's try this out, see what happens. Okay, great. So it's uploaded. It's targeting our environment production. Let's see, we should see changed. Uh-oh. There it is. All right. We should see change for the download. That's right. Okay, my apologies. And now it's going to restart Apache. Great. So let's copy this. We already have it here, but we'll just copy it in anyway. And there it is. It's our little guy. He's so happy. That's awesome. Look at him. Okay. So there's a lot of power in this syntax. You can take existing playbooks that are created by different departments. You can combine them into your workflow to make, something more robust. This allows you to treat your playbooks kind of like Legos. If you're familiar, if you played with Legos as a kid or as an adult, in my case, you can take these little blocks and you can stack them on top of each other, and they interlock and they form something even cooler than the individual components, right? So this kind of Lego ability has a lot of power. What comes next? You know what? It occurred to me, we have two servers, right? We have our production and our staging. Let's go back and look at those. Now, what happens if we want a new server, right? That's something that could happen. I want to show that module. I'm getting a little antsy. I'm seeing the time here. I'm thinking that module is calling to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste. We're going to create a playbook that creates a new EC2 instance. Then we're going to provision it, and we're going to treat it just like the other ones. Okay. So here's what we'll do. We have. I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call it new_server.yaml. And I'm just going to paste this in. Okay. It's similar to what we had before. We're running this on our local version. We don't need to connect out to find anything in Amazon because we're going to do this. We're going to run the code locally. It doesn't have to run on another instance, right? But it's going to, that code is going to create a new server. Okay. So here's what it does. We're saying we have an AWS environment called staging. Server name is going to be webinar VM. And then we're going to run the EC2 module. We're going to pass in some variables, right? Instance type, T2 micro. This AMI, what this is just a base Ubuntu image. We're going to wait for it. I already had a security group that I was using for something else. I'm reusing it here. It's bad form in a real environment, but for a demo, it's okay. Putting it in the West 2 region, so sending this out to Oregon. And then we have our instance tags. Remember we saw those? We saw those here, tags. Environment, name. Okay, so we have nothing here that's running that has a name of webinar VM. So we'll see it up there in just a bit. Okay, we're assigning it to a subnet. We want it to have a public IP address. Now here's a piece of really cool functionality. We're going to register the output to a variable called EC2info, and we can debug with it for local testing. So we can say debug, we're going to spit out a variable, and this is the variable. This is a very powerful thing because you can use the output from one thing to use as the input for something else later. If you run this register with some module, it's going to take that output, it's going to hold on to it for your playbook, and then you can use it in another task. So we could say, we could have another task here, name, we'll just say pretend, okay, because we're not really doing anything with it, but if we had a module, we could do something with it. I'm just going to do something that's not real for the sake, we'll say print, this isn't real, but you get the point. And then we could pass it in info, we could pass it in info from this variable. We could say instances, right? So it's going to be a dictionary, and you can treat it as such, and then you can use whatever data it collects from that output to feed information for other tasks. Okay, so let's save that back, and let's run this. Let's see what happens. Okay, we'll go Ansible playbook, Ansible tac playbook, and we'll say new server. We'll see what happens. All right. Remember I said that we can debug, right? We have this line here, debug, and we're going to spit out the results that this EC2 module produces, right? That's this here. That's all this information, right? So we can use that for later on. You can see all sorts of fun information here. More importantly, we should now have a new server. And here he is. He seems really happy running in his new little environment. But there's nothing on it. Okay, so we're going to go back to make sure it's running, it's labeled as environment staging. So now if we ran this command we ran just a bit ago, and upload and deploy. We're not going to do production. This time we're going to do staging. It's going to send our latest version to both staging servers. Okay, let's look at that. This is our other staging server. Let's look at it and see that it shouldn't have. Okay, remember our latest version has our little guy here? Okay, this one does not. So we have two servers. We have our new staging and our old staging, and they're both on an older version. So let's see if we can't update those. Okay, notice it picked up on our new server. It doesn't need to install Apache on the previous staging server, but it does need to do it for the new one because we just provision a brand new instance. It has nothing on it, so that's what's happening there. It's going to restart Apache. Okay, great. So let's refresh this. Okay, so our first staging server up and running. Now we'll refresh this. Okay, so if you have 1 or 1,000,000 servers, it's okay. You tell Ansible how to identify those servers and what to run, and it's going to go out and run them. Okay, so let's close out of here, and let's go all the way back. So now, playbooks. Let's see what have we covered. Yeah, we've covered how to create a basic playbook with uploading this to S3, and then we provisioned our web server to use that. And then we created our upload and deploy. And if you wanted to always be dynamic, you could do that. You could include the. Let's copy and paste this. There we go. You could include new server here, new _ server, right? And if we had another playbook that would kill the servers when we're done, what we would have is the ability to create a new server dynamically, a staging server, upload our code to it, put it on, configure it, actually set up the environment the way we would in production, and then if we had another playbook to run some tests, we could run those tests, verify that everything's the way we expect it, and if everything is good, we can send it over to production. So you can mix and match, you can include stuff, you can dynamically create servers, destroy them when you're done, and it makes life a lot easier. These are now reproducible little Lego bits of code that we can reuse as we see fit. No matter how many times we run new server, we'll always get the same consistent results. Okay. Let's back up here. Now I want to show you guys how to create a module. Right? We used the EC2 module. You can see here. We used the S3 module, apt, get URL. These are all built-in modules. There are hundreds of them. There's an awful lot. What happens when you want to do something custom? Okay, so we're going to create our own, we're going to call it demo.py. And I'm going to steal some code that I had from previous demo. Just copy that, and I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, here's what we're doing with this. I'm saying we're going to grab our, Ansible gives us a framework for creating some of the basic stuff that all modules will do, right? You're going to parse some command line arguments, and you're going to spit out some output in a JSON format. So to make it easier, Ansible has given us the ability to import these modules. All right, so what we're doing here is we're creating an Ansible module, and we're passing in our expected command line arguments. We're going to say show name, it's required false, right? So you're going to put it in optionally, and it's a type of Boolean. Now this will cast it into a Boolean when we use it later on. We're going to grab the IP address from the machine, and then depending on whether we say show name, we'll either show the operating system name or we won't. Now this is not particularly useful. However, it's just a skeleton so that you can see with just a little bit of code, you can grab some information from the command line and then do something with it and return something valuable. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to try and run our command. Let's see, save this. And I've got a handy little cheat sheet here. So let's say show name yes. All right. What's happening here? This is not unexpected. We've created a module and we've told it to go ahead and run it. Problem is, Ansible doesn't know that we have an additional modules directory. So it's looking in its default directory for all of the modules and it's saying, I don't know what you're thinking because this isn't a default. All right. We solve that by making sure that you can put it in the Ansible config, or we can make sure that our environment variable is set. So let's do that. I'm just going to set it in an environment variable. I'm saying the Ansible library should also consider my stuff to come from this location, right? This is where we're currently at. So let's run that again. So now we have 3, right? What this is doing is it's connecting to all of our servers on US West 2. Go back here. That's these servers here. So let's see, we have, let's get this side by side. 172.3.1.16.2.16. And if you look here at private IP addresses, 172.3.1.16.2.16. If we went through the list, we have 41.11, 41.11, and 25.53, 25.53, okay? What this does is it says connect to all of these servers, take this code, take our demo module, and then run it on those servers. That's why Python needs to be installed on the servers, because it's going to execute this code from those environments. That's how it gets this information. So with just a few lines of code, we were able to create a very simple module. You see we have this module.exit JSON, right? If everything is good, it's just going to exit. It's going to do an exit with a 0 to say that there were no errors, and it's going to return this as a JSON object. And that's pretty much what we saw here, right? So a little JSON object. So if for some reason you don't have a sufficient module to do what you need, you can create your own. Like I said, the modules index is pretty involved. They have an awful lot. So before you go and create something on your own, you should check, make sure that with some module or combination of a couple modules, if you can't create what you need to, then go ahead and create your own. And if it's something that's kind of generic enough that you can share it with the community, well, that's great too. We won't talk about Galaxy, Ansible. Well, let me just click. I know I just said we won't talk about it, but now I'm feeling bad. Ansible Galaxy is a repository for people solve problems every day with different forms of playbooks, right? So maybe it's configuring a Python server under Apache with ModWhiskey, right? So people solve these problems all the time. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can go to Galaxy. You can see if the problem that you're trying to solve has been solved, and then you can download these playbooks that people have already written. It just makes it so it's less time for you, right? If you can have something already written that does at least 90% of what you need, then it makes sense to use something like that. So this is Ansible at a high level. Ansible it's an automation engine that allows you to either statically or dynamically specify which servers you want to target and then run commands across those servers. It also allows you to easily install your own modules if the built-in ones don't work. So that's kind of the demo as I have it prepared. We have just a couple of minutes. I'm scrolling through the questions to see. Let me just make the screen a little bigger. Let's see. Someone's asking about using range. Like their question was specifically, if we have a, let me pull up the example here. let's see. Find the one. All right. So if you see here, we have our tag underscore environment production. They want to know about using some mechanism to specify like a regex for production. Maybe you have production 01, production 2. Yeah, to my knowledge, that is a thing. I know it exists in the static hosts where you can specify use regex to specify. I've never used it on the command line. I'll get back to you guys on the community forums to tell you for sure if it will work on the command line, but it will work with your host file. Is Ansible Tower basically a GUI for the command line, or is it different? This is a really good question. It's about Ansible Tower. Ansible Tower, yes, it has it's a GUI for the command line and for your playbooks, but it's a little bit more than that. It's it keeps a history. It allows you to have some level of audit ability, so you can audit who ran what, and you can share specific playbooks with people. So yes, at a high level, it does allow you to just treat the command line as a GUI, but it gives you a lot more than that too. And I heard rumors, this is a rumor, please don't quote me, I heard rumors that Red Hat may eventually make that open source if it hasn't been already. I haven't kept up on that. So if that's the case, that'll be really cool. Let's see. Where are the AWS connection settings? That's a really great question. Okay, you can use a couple places. Now, I'm not going to drill into this file because, well, it's where my private key is stored for my particular user, and I'm still using that key. But you see here there's a EC2. Can I make this bigger? I can't. On the left-hand side of the screen, just above where it says ec2.py, we have an ec2.ini. You can specify there where the AWS, see how you have these here? You can specify in your ini file. You can also export these, right? These are just the generic ones that they use. You can export these for your terminal session. You can have them also in your RC file so that it will happen every time you log into your terminal. But you can specify a path to this ini file, and that's where it'll be. I just flashed it on the screen. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully you guys won't do anything nefarious with my secret keys here. Okay, let's see. How do you compare it with Chef? That's a great question. So I've used both in the past, and I really like them both. Here's what I like about Chef. I'm familiar with Ruby. I did a lot of Ruby dev, so I felt really comfortable jumping in and using their syntax for their DSL. Not everyone does. I'm told that the learning curve can be steep, and I imagine that's true. So if you're a programmer, you feel really at home with Ruby and Chef because you can do really complex things in code. Now, with Ansible, you've seen you have these playbook files, right? So a lot of the stuff that you would do is easily encapsulated in 1 or 2 lines, but you also have the ability to use modules. Your module could be anything. It doesn't have to be Python. Python is what Ansible is written in, so they have some nice helper libraries, but anything that can handle standard I/O can be used as a module. So there's a lot of flexibility there, and I also like I like that I don't need to have any sort of agent on a particular server, and I think that has a lot of power. Let's see. Okay. Somebody asked, how does Ansible know to use which OS command to run when installing something? So in our example, we used apt to install Apache, right? But if we were on a Red Hat system, we would use yum. Now, you can specify with the, I think the actual keyword is when or where. Sorry, it's slipping my mind at the moment. But there is a syntax that allows you to specify if the OS is of this flavor, then you'll want to do this command or that. So you'll say when it's Red Hat, you'll do the same command with yum, and if it's Ubuntu or Debian, you'll want to use apt. Okay, let's see if we have time for one more. Let's see. Yeah, someone was kind enough to suggest that they can't guarantee others won't muck about with my private keys, and they suggest deleting them. I think that's probably a good idea. So if you're trashing my environment as we speak, it's going to end in like 40 seconds. I apologize. Your fun will be over. Do we have time? Yeah, we got time for one more. Okay, do the commands in Ansible execute serially through the endpoints? For example, when you install Apache, does it need to wait? You can specify how many it will run simultaneously. So you can run them in parallel, or you can run them serially, okay? Great feature. If you are going to do a batch of 10 different servers, you could run them either all at once, or you could have it just go through one at a time. There's pros and cons to each. Like if you do one at a time and there is a failure, you'll see it before it completes them all, or all at once. Obviously, it's faster if you're trying to update something like the Heartbleed bug that we had ages ago. Remember that one? You'd test it locally, and then you would want to just be able to deploy that as quickly as possible. Okay. So I think that's about all the time we have. You guys have a lot more questions, I see. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to try and distill these questions that are left, because there are a lot of really great questions here, and work with my colleagues to try and get these onto the community forums. So check out the DevOps community forum over the coming days. It'll probably be in a few days. I'll start asking these questions and answering them, and then you guys will have that as a resource to come back to. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming. It's been a lot of fun. I hope this was useful for you guys. It was a lot of fun for me, and I look forward to talking with you at the next webinar. Thanks everyone.